The presidential residence in Kazakhstan's largest city, Almaty, engulfed in flames on January 5th during protests against a sudden surge in fuel prices. Protests also broke out in the country's capital, Nur-Sultan, as well as other large cities, sparked by the government's decision to lift a cap on fuel prices that went in place on New Year's Day. That caused the price of fuel to double overnight. On Wednesday, President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev dismissed the prime minister in his cabinet and removed former President Nursultan Nazarbayev as leader of the National Security Council. He also promised to crack down on protesters.
This is something quite unexpected. Kazakhstan has been very stable politically and economically to a relative extent since its independence in 1991. What we see today is really unexpected and something quite significant for Kazakhstan and for the region.
According to the Kazakh state media, many of the demonstrators who gathered outside the presidential residence and the Almaty main administration building were carrying clubs and shields. The protests began on Sunday, January 2nd, in Zhanaozen and quickly spread.
The protests started in western Kazakhstan, where people tend to rely on this gas more than in other parts of the country. But what's important to note here is that this is the oil field of Kazakhstan. So people are protesting the rise in gas prices in the place where the oil is produced.
President Tokayev is promising to restore gas prices to last year's levels and has declared a 2-week state of emergency in the two largest cities, Almaty and capital Nur-Sultan. The order includes an overnight curfew and limited movement into and around the cities.
President Tokayev declared a state of emergency until January 19th. And that means that he really believes that these protests have the potential to do something in the long term. I think that the repression that the government puts on them, obviously the coercive force, will probably quell them for the short term. But I think these issues in the longer term will be much harder to address.
The government, which has strong ties to the Putin government in Russia, is also restricting access to some parts of the internet. Anna Rice, VOA News, Washington.